I ran into the typical problems of spindle turners that I got a lot of torn end grain, and hopefully we're going to learn about that next time. So I wanted to see if I can get a little better at turn tops, make them a little faster, make the kids a little happier. I'm kind of jealous of some of the smiles that that we saw here today on the screen. So I'm going to take you through a little of my journey of tops, and when Jim and I first talked about this, we said we would do it from basic to advanced. And so I hope I have a little something for the beginners and some things maybe for the advanced people. But for the beginners, I thought what could be better than a top with training wheels. And she's still learning how to spin, but that's my beginner top. I really was hoping I could get one to like just to spin. I tried a couple of them, but
maybe you need 2 more wheels. 2 more.
But yeah, there's only 2 wheels on a bicycle, so
Bicycle.
so I thought that would. So I started doing a little research into tops, and one of the things I looked at YouTube videos, joined some Facebook top groups, and one of the things that I learned, if you wanted to get better spin times, was that there are 2 things that are important. One was the surface that you spun it on, and the other was that the point. And rather than a point, the tops that had really long spin times, if you're going for it, had either ceramic or ruby balls on the bottom rather than a wooden point. So I went on eBay and I ordered some ceramic balls, and I made my first wooden top, which is basically a disc with a little brass rod. I did some knurling on my CNC. This one, I could, spin it on a surface like this, and actually the first surface that I spun it on was a little beauty mirror, and you could get, if you spin, you can get up to 2 minutes of spin time with that, which was pretty good. So I thought I was really clever, and I had done some medallions and some jewelry like this with yin yang, so I thought that'd be a real cool looking top. So I made exactly the same design, exactly the same diameter, exactly the same type of ball on the bottom, and I got my first lesson in balance and tops. And the difference in weight of the ebony and the maple are such that you just can't make a top that doesn't have the balance. So whereas you can make some really, and I've seen some really interesting tops that have some nice segments in them, you can do some nice pretty things, but just make sure you do it even. So then I got into things like, what can you spin it on? And I started to make some spin stations. This was one of the first ones I made, and I learned that if you get some concave glass, and this is, I think about it's a lens, I think it's a 50 millimeter glass lens. The high dollar ones are made of borosilicate glass, but this, I was able to start getting some nice spin times, and I started making them, trying to get some long spin times. Now, in order to get long spin times, you tend to go away from wood and you start to go into metals, if you see the things. And I've done these, I have a lot of variations that I've done. These are all done on a wood lathe. And if we got some time tonight, I may show you these parts of this. It's really hard to do the whole thing on there. But if you take this, and another thing, the design feature on here, I'm sorry about doing this with a camera. Can I put it down, or
well, if you just hold still. Anyway. Okay. You can move your lips.
All right, you got it.
Okay. So there's this little center portion here is raised now, so if there's any wobble at all in the top, the edges won't touch the glass and slow it down and give it a chance to rest. And I've lost a little time on this top, but it has spun for 5 minutes before. And it'll do a little dance, and sometimes it'll stabilize, and I don't want to take up the whole meeting to see you watch it spin, but You can get these to spin for, if you're good, you can get them. And I think a few people here, Herb, you've seen me spinning for 4 or 5 minutes, yeah. So they don't do it all the time. And then I played around with some other designs. If you start going into the physics of it, what you want is, there's several things. There's the moment of inertia, that you want a heavy material on the outside, but in order to get it to spin fast to begin with, you want a light material on the inside. So I started making some with aluminum in the center and brass on the outside. And then this is just another little technique I've used, is to just take some O-rings here instead of trying to knurl the top. And I never really got any to beat my 5 minutes, but anyway, you can sit here watching them forever. They're certainly a lot of fun to...
Will you turn any aluminum on your lathe too?
Yes, yes, all on the wood lathe. Everything I've done is on the wood lathe.
What kind of tool you use?
High-speed steel M2. I make a lot of my own tooling, but which I'm going to show you a little later on. That's another part of the
Okay.
demo. That
Carbide work okay?
carbide? Yeah, you can do it with the carbide inserts. Absolutely. Anything that's used. If you look at what's used on metal lathes for materials that are a lot harder than brass, they use M2 steel, M4 steel, and carbide insert tools. So they, in theory, if you can hold them steady and not get a catch on the lathe, which some of the metals want to do a little bit, you can certainly turn them on a wood lathe. Yeah, no problem.
You don't have to worry about end rate.
You don't have to worry about that. You've got a few other things to worry about.
Do you still use the same kind of angles on the cutters, or do you change that? Brass, you typically, I think, on a metal lathe, you use them like not a very sharp cutter. So I'm wondering what you're using here.
I pretty much go midpoint, of the center line, tool height at the center line.
Okay.
I'm not no means an expert. I haven't done a lot on the wood lathe like this, but I just try it, and when I get too far, then I'm having some trouble. I go to some low grit sandpaper, and I'm not afraid to do that at all. So then I started, matter of fact, Jim Bumpus turned me on to a little document that the AAW put out. And if you're an AAW member, there's a publication called, I think it's in their Fundamentals series about tops for fun. It's a whole list of articles, or a compilation of articles that talks about different types of tops. Some of the ones you have here, some of the ideas I got are like these little ballerinas, and I'm a little electronics geek, so I had to add a little electronics to it, and she can do a little dance. So we have fun with this at the state fair. That was going the whole time that the state fair was going. So that's a little, just has a little DC motor under here with a little Arduino controlling it that I wrote a little program for. And then I did another little dance one. This, Bill Walter's wife, Nancy, painted this for me. But she will also spin by hand too, and does a little dance. Sometimes she spins a little better than others, but it's certainly a nice little looker and a little, not a long spin, but certainly nice decoration and still fun to play with. So then I got into some other unusual things. This is one I tried. It's another looker where I had a small piece of burl and I just cast some resin, some lightly tinted resin around it, figuring, boy, that would look cool too. And then that was my second lesson in balance because the resin is different density than the wood, and you can get it to spin, but not very well. I mean, you can see what happens to a... so you still got to remember, you can get them to look nice, but they don't know spin well. And then I have a couple here. These two were made with little watch faces inside of them, so just another idea of how you can decorate There's a million ways to decorate them, and they spin fairly nicely. If you want to play some games, here's a faceted one. So this is a little dice game that you can play, and you know, whatever number it lands on, you can play a game, and you could, you know, kids can play games with them. You know, you keep adding up the numbers till 21 or 25 and can't go over, and so there's certainly a lot of games you can play. And
Did you make that one?
Yeah. Yeah, made.
Did you paint the dots on there?
Those dots are drilled and filled with polymer clay.
Okay. Baked?
So and baked, yes. So there's, I have a bunch of polymer clay stuff here, which could be a whole demo by itself. That's some things you can do with polymer clay. Matter of fact, this is another one that's coated with polymer clay. It's my attempt at an apple. I know Ron Bishop, he does a lot better apples than I do, and this doesn't spin the greatest, but you can get a really nice surface here with polymer clay. That's just coated with it and baked. And you make some apples, don't you? No. Who's to make the apples? Somebody in here makes them. Really nice. The golf ball for those golf players in here. This has a where the most of mine that use the ceramic balls use a 4 millimeter. This is a 1/4 inch, which is closer to 6 millimeter, a little over 6 millimeter, and it's the and again, there's just a hole drilled through it. Put a piece of brass rod and a couple of O-rings on there, and it's actually a pretty nice.
Nice, yeah.
The only problem is should have had a T on it. Should have used a T.
Next time.
Next one.
Bruce, did the Titleist spin longer?
You know, it depends on the dimples, really.
How do you tell you don't give a golf ball, aren't some of those liquid sealing? Golf balls?
That one
They
was
stopped making them about.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I know.
That was in the
I'm just
60s.
thinking you go-
That's okay. This is another classic. I've seen some YouTube videos. Eli Alvacera, I think is the guy's name. He has 4 of these at one time spinning on his finger. I can barely get one, but it's the ones that, it's another little thing to try, and it all depends. I haven't.
People can jump from one to the other.
Yeah, I haven't learned it. This is one that I haven't really mastered. The other one that, yeah.
The more the weight is at the very bottom edge,
Yeah, I
the
know.
better it'll spin. And if it's an even wall all the way up, then you don't have all your weight at the bottom. So if you had thicker wall, like a rim at the bottom, and thinner as it goes up, then they spin better.
Yes, and then you look at the ones that Eli does, and his are like, not even, they're almost flat. Yeah.
You know, I turned some at the fair. You can do them really quickly. They don't, you know, what you send back there doesn't really apply, Steve. One of the keys, if you want to do a trick with them, is just press it on your finger. And
Yeah, I tried that. Yeah, I can almost get that one.
When kids could do them, they were excited.
Yes. So then there's the levitating top. So this made a big hit at the state fair as well.
Oh, wow.
Is it magnet?
Yeah. There's a little magnet inside here, a little nail on top of here. So that's another one that made a big hit. This is a decorating technique that I just started playing around with, and it's called hydro dipping. Has anybody ever done any hydro dipping? Yeah.
Seen it done.
Yeah.
What is it exactly?
Okay, hydro dipping, there's several ways to do it. The way I tried to do it is with films like this. And you can buy these films, and you can look up the YouTube videos on hydro dipping. But basically what you do is you take a vat of water, and you take the film and you put it in, float it on the surface of the water. You spray an activator on it, and then you take the piece and you dip it in there and pull it out, and it transfers the material that was on the film onto the piece. Now there's one thing you want to do is make sure you don't have plain wood, that you want to seal the wood first with CA. That was the first mistake I made. So you do want to seal your wood first. The other way that you can do it is with, instead of using a film like this, and they have there's a bazillion designs out there that you can buy, but you can take the same tub of water and take spray paint, oil-based spray paint, and spray on the surface 3 or 4 or more different colors at a time to get some kind of random pattern. You can also do it, I've played around with nail polish and done it on a small piece, which also works a little bit. I would say I haven't perfected the technique for sure, but I just want to offer it as one possible way of decorating.
What was the technique called again?
Hydro dipping, H-Y-D-R-O, dipping. So now the other things you can get into are handles. So you can take tops that spin with your fingers. Here's another opportunity. So not only can you make spin stations and platters like these, you can also make some handles, and these basically have a hole that the top fits in. You wind a string around it, and you can generate a lot higher velocity with the tops by pulling it with a spin. And if I did a little better, it would have gone a little better, but it's certainly another way to do it. Now, here's another decorating technique which I thought was pretty cool, and this is polymer clay again on here. And the way I did this is, if you're not familiar with polymer clay, it comes in these little packets that you buy at Michael's or AC Moore, some of the hobby stores, and you can shape it in any way you want. But the way I did this particular one was took a series of different colors and then rolled them to into thin sheets. And then I took the thin sheets and and I'll pass this around. I made layers of them, and then I deformed it. So to get some of these more unusual patterns in here, you can take a little stick and poke it in with a little, like a little ball tool. You can just press it in with your fingers, you can twist it, and then you get it in sort of a block shape. And then you can take what's called a tissue knife, and they sell these along with in the polymer clay section. They're very sharp, thin knives. And you just take little slices of this, very, very thin. I'm going to take one that's a little thicker than, but you just take a little thin slice like this, press it on the wood, and build them all around. And then you bake it in the oven for about 275 for about 30 minutes. And then it's hard, and then you can finish it. You can sand it and finish it. You don't want to sand it too much or turn it too much. You can put a turning tool on them sometimes, but generally they're very thin layers, and then you can put a protective coating on it like CA or something like that. But you can make some really unusual designs, or you can even buy some create what they call canes, which are designs that you can apply to.
So the wood tolerates that temperature for that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you prepare the wood specially for it to stick?
No.
Or it just sticks?
Sometimes you can, there are some people that take a 50-50 solution of white glue and water and paint it on there, but you don't really have to. I find you don't have to.
What was that for? What? I wasn't.
Just to help it
listening.
stick.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
some people do that.
Gotcha.
Rick, do you have any problem maintaining the weight balance when you polymer plate?
I haven't. I mean, certainly this one, it's pretty nice.
You're sanding it down after you put it on, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
after it
that's-
bakes.
After it's baked, so that's how
After
you
it
can
bakes.
get a uniform balance again, I would imagine.
Okay.
You turn it on the lathe and do the sanding?
Yes.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
That's cool, yeah. You play dice games and.
So now we have a few, you don't have to have a stem on the top. So this is my hypnotic top. So you are getting you are enjoying this. You will clap for me afterwards.
What's on the bottom of that?
This is just a little, this is just shaped to a cone. Yeah, so you can, you know, you can spin them on the side and you can spin them faster or slow. And
Yeah, nice.
this guy here was just to show that you can make it out of different materials. This is a imitation stone. It's called true stone. It's really pieces of stone embedded in plastic that you buy. It was started as a bottle stopper top and a brass thing on here, but you'll notice this, it won't turn at all. Why won't it turn? Because there's a ball bearing inside, so if you do that,
Wow.
That's cool.
That is cool. Huh.
and you can put little jewels on the top of them. This is a little cubic zirconia. So now we have some tops that do some unusual things. This is another one with a string top. I'm not the best at this one, but I'm going to see if I can make it work. Sometimes you can make the string twist go up and back and forth, but that's a drop top. If you twist it, you know, it'll spin. I'm still working on getting good at that one. Jared is going to demonstrate this one because when he was a kid, he grew up in Puerto Rico, Colombia. And in Colombia, they used to play with these. These are the tops that you throw. And I'm not any good at it, but Jared gave a demo of it, and he's very good at it.
He hasn't done it since he was 10 and succeeded the first time he tried, which was nice, but we'll see.
So you have to hold it a certain way in your hand. You have to throw it a certain way. You hold it, notice he's holding it upside down.
So the little loop goes around the top. Where's the camera? Loop goes around the top and then it wraps around the point. And when you throw it, you flick your wrist and whip it back. And when you whip it back, it flips up on its head. So Stan, I'm going to aim for something around here. Just kind of point it straight and see what happens. Barbara, I apologize if I hit you.
Wow. So cool.
I need to go buy a lottery ticket. That's 2 in a row.
So there was a gentleman who grew up in Puerto Rico who came up to me at the state fair when he saw that. He was really fascinated with it. He said they used to have put nails in the bottom of them, make them out of wood, and they used to fight with them and try to throw them at each other and split each other's not throw them at each other's tops, not each other.
Oh, okay.
I played the same game, but sometimes you end up getting hit.
Good job.
Thank you, Jared.
Yes.
Okay. So then, reaching into my electronics bag of tricks, I wanted a top that lit up when you when you spun it. And it was a combination of, this was also in, I don't think it was in the AAW article, but there was another article online, I think that and I did a write-up on this and I put a reference to it, how to make a launcher out of PVC pipe, which is basically just a pipe with a hole drilled in and a hand here. But if this works correctly,
Oh, wow, wow.
Hey.
That's
That's
great.
pretty cool.
All right.
it lights when you spin it.
That is cool.
And that's on my top arena. I wish the glass was a little concave, but it
You can
still
see it in the
looks.
picture up there.
Yes.
You can see the reflection.
Wow.
Why does the spinning motion cause it to light?
Aha. I knew so. Thank you, sir.
He's from Michigan.
If I can get it apart.
Turn it off.
There's a little bit of pendulum in there.
That's not a centrifugal force.
Inductor?
Okay.
Inductor?
There are 4 LED lights here,
Bruce, point the camera.
okay?
Yeah.
Inside there's a little spring, and when there's enough centrifugal force to make the spring, it makes contact with this little electrode on the side, and it completes the circuit and the light comes on.
You are a geek.
Come on.
Did you invent that or did you see that on YouTube?
No, that's mine. That's all.
Wow.
Oh, man.
I did have a conversation with Herb about it. We talked about centrifugal switches, and I was looking, this, I tried to buy some switches to make it work. There's another top that I was not able to successfully make, and I've seen a couple of them well, and that's the ones that whistle and make music, and I tried a couple of those, and I have to say that's one where I was not successful in doing, but it was still fun. I was going to do one similar to that and have it get one of these little cards, like the birthday cards that play Beethoven's Fifth or something like that. That's in the cards. This is one I bought. It's just cool, so I'll show it. It's got a little magnet. This is another one that made a little hit at the state fair. Whoop.
Oh.
If I can stay crawl around.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I'm just, yeah, I'm not.
It's a snake.
There we go.
Wow.
That is cool.
I didn't make that one, but it was cool enough to bring to show, so
Yeah.
just to trigger some ideas of what's possible with tops. So now there's some tops that do some, well, before I get to that, I'm going to do the multi-axis top, because everybody's got to have a multi-axis
That's
top.
right, that's
And it's still balanced enough to spin.
That's amazing.
So that's pretty good. Now, I've seen Barbara do multi-axis turning multiple times. I've seen her books. I have one of her early books. And one of the differences between this top and what I've seen a lot of Barbara do is that she doesn't do too many things small. They're a lot bigger. And so her axes are further apart from the center where I needed to be. And every time I tried to do her, this is her parallel,
Right.
circular
Right.
quadrant.
Yeah, very good.
But every time I tried to make it, when I tried to center on the different axis, the wood split. They were too close to one another to do it. So I said, there's got to be a better way. So, genius that I am, I decided to come up with a different way of doing it. So I had some 1x8 threaded rod, and I put this on my metal lathe, and I made it eccentric, just a little bit, such that I could put it in the chuck Okay, eccentric, right?
Yeah.
Take another chuck. Oh, sure. And now,
Oh, yeah.
spinning eccentrically. Want to change the axis?
We do that by accident,
Huh?
We
Oh,
do,
yeah.
we do that by
Yeah.
accident.
Move it 180 degrees
Yeah.
Yeah.
or 120 degrees or whatever you want. Now you have a new axis.
And how did you measure that? How did you do that? You just twisted it 120 degrees?
Well, I did 180 degrees because I'm one of those
Right,
ones.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can align it, you can
That's
just,
what I do with the jaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. You can mark it
Good,
in.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So for small pieces,
Yeah.
where you're not doing because trying to put the center really close to one another
Right.
was hard. And they sell there's a few things out there you can buy that'll do this, but I'm frugal. So, yes, sir.
Could you make that piece out of aluminum or wood inlay?
Well, I had,
You need a four-jaw, you need a chuck to eccentric.
you almost need a four-jaw independent chuck to create the piece. Now, there may be other ways to create the piece. You may be able to chuck it with like a shim in there or an insert in there. There may be other ways to do it. I had a four-jaw independent chuck on my metal lathe, so that's how I did it. I think there's probably other ways you could do it if you,
Yeah, well, how would you do it if you didn't have a metal lathe?
There's a good way. You could just put a piece of wood in the four-jaw chuck and drill a hole off center and glue that in. I mean, there are a lot of ways. That's a really brilliant idea, but there are a lot of ways to do that. That'd be a parallel axis. So do you do the stem and then you put it onto the other part, the
I made the stem, yes, and then,
And then
yeah, and then I drill a hole here.
drill a hole there?
I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. I can think of really easy ways to do that just with wood. To make a spindle like that one is, measure the size, drill a hole off center, and then all you have to do is do exactly what he did, open the jaws, twist it around however degrees, yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
you got a collar chuck there too.
Yeah, but you could put any kind of chuck in here. I mean,
Yeah,
you could double chuck it, you can put another spoon chuck in there.
You could put a mini chuck in there too.
Lots of different ways.
fabulous. Now I might try to make one.
Okay, so now we're going to get into some tops that do some unusual things. This is an ellipsoid, and an ellipsoid is it's made to the golden ratio, where the diameter to the length is 1.6 something something something, and there was no way that I could ever turn this on the lathe without a template. So what I did was I went into probably PowerPoint or something like that, drew a circle of the diameter of whatever length I want to do, and then just squished the circle in PowerPoint so that so I knew the diameter, the dimension here, the dimension here, printed it, and then I had a template for this, and then I could turn to that template. Now, this is why is this a top when it looks like an Easter egg, right? Because when you spin it on its side like this, it turns up and it goes upside down.
Oh, the physics there at work. Huh?
It's kind of like a hard-boiled egg, which will do the same thing. You cannot spin an unboiled egg on its end, but you can spin a hard-boiled egg on its end.
I'd break it trying to spin it. I can't even spin that one. Wow.
So
Yeah,
then there's this guy. And this is one I bought. I made one, but it doesn't work quite as well as this, so I figured I'd show the one I bought. And the reason I bought it, because I thought it was pretty cool when I saw the video on it, and they didn't tell you how to make it. But I thought maybe if I looked at it, I could tell how to make it. And you would think that this would spin on this axis here with this. And if you try to spin it on here, it doesn't spin very well on there. If you spin it on here, it spins fairly well. But if you do this, and this may or may not work, I'll give myself 3 tries to do this. But if you spin it like this, and you hit it the right way, it will turn upside down.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not getting it.
Huh.
One more try. Now, if you hit it right,
It'll do that.
it'll turn upside down. It takes a little practice. I wish I could have done it for you,
What do
but
they call that?
that's like a somersault top, I think. Yeah.
So who came up with that?
I don't know. Almost.
Somebody help out of talk.
Yeah,
He's a 7-year-old.
okay, yeah.
Oh, well. So then there's the more famous tippy top, which tippy tops are a hollow truncated sphere that have a stem on them, and when you spin them like this, they should turn upside down and spin on the top.
There it goes, yep.
Cool.
And there are several ways to make these. You can make them out of one piece, which I like to, if you make them out of a good hard wood that doesn't have any defects in it. I made them out of burls. If you make them out of burls, you really want to make them 2-piece. Because the stem is going to break when you try either hollowing out or when you turn it around to finish off. But the burls make some really nice ones. They're pretty. The secret of getting these things to work is they have to be weighted such that when you put them down like this, they will always go up like this. That they'll always wind up upright. So you can never lie one down.
What are these things called?
Tippy tops.
So the weight's in the bottom of it, the bottom of the hollow?
They're weighted to the bottom because of
Are
the
they weighted because of how you turned it or because you implanted something there?
no, you can do either. And I've tried things like making them, putting a heavier wood on the bottom and a lighter wood on the top. That helps it. Some people make them with a stem and put a ball bearing in them to weight it. I've tried the ball bearing once. It didn't do much for me. I think I was better able to just make them out of one piece. And you can make them out of different woods, and I've made them out of. I actually bought this one because I saw some YouTube videos on it, and people were having trouble making them. We made 20 of them before we got one right. And, I'm probably crazy because I'm going to try to make one tonight for you all. But I bought this one because it said you had to have a flat bottom and you couldn't have a rounded top. And what does this one have is a rounded top and a flat bottom. And this one I think is aluminum. And it works really well.
That is cool.
And that one goes for quite a long time.
I've seen them that size. Can you make them any larger than that?
I've seen a couple larger, yeah. I haven't tried to make any larger ones yet. Yeah. It'll do a little dance when it slows down. It won't take too much longer.
You said that's all a chunk of aluminum? Is that what you said that one was?
Yeah, I thought it was steel at first until I made one out of brass, and my brass one was so much heavier than that one. I said, that's got to be aluminum. So it does that, and then it does a nice little dance around there.
So that's a purchase one?
That one I bought, yeah.
Just go back up.
That goes, that's, okay.
But they're mesmerizing you. And then I did make one out of brass. Now these I did 2 pieces because one, it's a pain to take that much brass away, and it was difficult enough hollowing it, so I did make it in 2 pieces. So I just, put the stem in. But you can spin them by the top. You can also spin them from the sides. That one works pretty well.
Did you thread the top in, or did you just?
No, that's the way I do it. Is before I finish. This is still on the lathe. I have a drill chuck here with the rod and the drill chuck, and the hole is drilled first, and then I just go in so it's centered and I glue it on the lathe, so it keeps it pretty well centered.
What kind of glue?
I'd use 5-minute epoxy. What else did I? Oh, and of course you can texture them, and I have a part of my demo. I have some texturing, and so I think I've covered pretty much everything I have on the table here. So,
Bruce, you mentioned, I think, the physics and all, but if you look, the mathematics and physics, it's 2 or 3 pages of mathematical formula and all
yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
That one little top.
yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, mine too. Yeah.
So now I'm going to show you some of my tools.
Yeah.
You turn poplar?
This is maple.
Wheels need to be stabilized.
Yeah, you might want to lock your casters
Yeah.
before you
Casters
start.
are.
I might. Thank you.
People in the front row want money.
I mostly like to make my own tools. And lately I came up with a design. For years I've used a shorter Medan, but I wanted to make something a little more professional maybe. And I saw some of these folks, some of these professionals selling these collet type stools that they sell for about $40, $50 to do things. Well, for about less than $15 you can buy a collet chuck holder drilling device on eBay that'll hold tools anywhere from 1 millimeter up to 13 millimeters in diameter, and 13 millimeters is a little over ½ inch. So it'll take 3/8 inch square, which if you look at the diameter of a 3/8 inch square, and I buy these tool steel for less than $5 a piece, and I sharpen both sides. So for $5 I have 2 tools. For $10 I got 4 surfaces that can keep me going all day without having to go to the sharpener. And this just tightens up, holds in right there. So now I have a turning tool. When I started using the Medan, my biggest question was bevel up or bevel down. And yes, the answer was. And I found out that there are some tools, some techniques that work very well with the bevel down. And if you look at the shape of this, and you look at some of the what they call the easy tools or some of the carbide insert tools, there's not too much difference between the end of this and the carbide tool, so the wood doesn't know the difference. But I can keep these pretty sharp. So I use this as my spindle roughing gouge, about midpoint. A little high.
people over in Europe use them upside down all the time.
What?
People over in Europe use them upside down all the time.
Bevel up?
Yeah, bevel up.
And I use it with bevel up too. But if I go in like this with bevel up, it's more straightened. If I go in with bevel down, it won't go that fast. That's my spindle roughing gas. So even though I'm almost, I'm gonna get around over here a little bit. So I'm pretty round there, but as with a lot of other tools that you do like that, you get a little torn end grain. So now if you take it and you go a little higher up, with bevel up, like they do in Europe, I can see the difference in shavings. That's ready for 400 grit or higher.
But you don't have a bevel to rub. You have to have a bevel to rub.
Different strokes for different folks.
Amen.
So,
Is that all done? Let me go back to the sharpening machine.
so I have, this is, that was a 3/8 inch, this is a 1/4 inch. So I'm just gonna take the end down here. And get ready to put my tenon on. I take the tool, turn it around. I now have my 15-degree angle on there.
So what happens if you use the bevel on those tools? I've never used one of those tools. If you let the bevel ride, and what happens then? Do you ever use the tool like that? All right, just curious.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't do much.
All right.
There's really nothing to ride. I don't.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bevel will ride on that.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of controversy of whether to put that 15-degree angle on it. Some people do with an overchuck, some people don't. I kind of like the 15-degree angle on there.
So that gives you taper on your.
Yes.
Quite long.
No, it knocked out my, so when I make my tippy tops, I typically make them about 1.25 inches in diameter. So the first thing I'll do is I'll here, just pulling that out closer to that. very similar to a peeling cut with a skew. I mean, it's really presenting at the same type of angle. And somewhere I have a little template, I think. Here you go. So basically, we're going to make a little truncated sphere or ball and stem. So I have a little template here where I mark out, and I know I have a little hole here from the tailstock, which I'm going to want to get rid of. So I'll move my template over a little bit. So that's where I want to. I'll take it down to about there. That's where it's going to end. That's the end here. And that's the center. Not quite the center, it's a little towards the stem because it's going to be truncated ball. One of the things that I saw in the YouTube video, I think it was from Alan Macer when you're making balls, is to make this line pretty thick. When you're making your ball there, don't start from the center, cut from here, and then blend it either with sandpaper or at the end. That keeps you from making a ball that looks like this. So then the first thing I'm going to do is take down a lot of the wood for the stem. And I want to make that about 1/4 of an inch. We don't need this guy anymore. Okay. In a weak moment, I bought a bolt gouge. But I just use it for 2 little cuts on here. One is that if you go straight in either with virtually any kind of tool, particularly the Vedan, you're going to get some pretty rough end grain here. So I want this to be smooth, and so I still keep it a little thicker in diameter than I want to for the end, because I'm going to get a catch at the end, and I'm going to take it off anyway, so I don't care if I get a catch at the end. So if I do, I'm just showing you what happens to me a lot of times at home. So I'm going to try to come in right here at the end and just take this off.
I can see it from here.
And now I have some real smooth end grain because I did a nice push cut with the bolt gouge.
Steve says you rode the bevel.
I did. I think I did.
Hey Bruce,
Yes.
could you visualize that again without cutting? Because you were in the way of the camera, we couldn't see it.
Okay. So basically, I'm taking a cut, riding the bevel, starting here, and just taking the cuts straight across, slicing it such that I don't get any torn end grain. Back to my banana. So now, there's a couple things I need to do here. One is I need to think about, I'm not going to be able to make a perfect ball at the end here. So there's some way I'm going to have to turn it around and hold it. And I can make this and put it in my collar chuck, but a lot of people don't have a collar chuck. So they have, but I know all of you have these little cutoffs when you're done turning things. You got these little pieces at the end. So I drill a 1/4 inch hole in here, go to the bandsaw, and I'm going to try to fit this in here so that I can chuck this up like this and have it be a jam chuck at the end. So you don't need a collar chuck when you're done. I'm getting close. And the closer I get, now I can turn the bevel up and get a little smoother cut. It's about 270 there. I'm looking for 250, so it's still tight fit. I'm really close. And we're almost worked there. I'm just going to take a little bit off here. Okay. So now we start turning the sphere. And I'm going to do it with my 1/4 inch, just because I feel like it. With straight end. Incidentally, just I have all kinds of tools that fit in here. I didn't go over this, but this is a hollowing tool. Parting tools fit in here.
Did you make all of these?
Yeah. Except for the parting tools. The parting tools are why not. And this happens to be a carbide insert tool, so that'll fit in there if I feel like using that. The skew chisel or whatever you call that. Squeegee. Yeah. Drop nose scraper. Another scraper. Box scraper. So these will all fit in these tools for.
Is that drill rod or what?
It's mostly M2 steel. Yeah.
Who's your source?
Shar tools. SHAR tool. So now this is just like you would a sphere, you just roll in the tool and start working in here. See how much faster you go, bevel down and bevel up. Just making room for myself. Okay, now while there's still meat on there, almost forgot to do this. You can texture it. So, frugal turner that I am, I didn't want to spend whatever Sorby charges, and I could have gone to the Lendman Library here and loaned the texturing tools, but I wanted to do some things. And there's a other than the Sorby texturing tools out there, there's a tool maker called Elf, and Elf sells for about 70 or 80 bucks, and it's a little ball bearing, and it with a magnet in it, and it holds little burrs. So I says, well, all I need is something that rotates, and I had a handpiece around from a Fordham tool, but I'm sure you could use a Dremel tool or anything else, or ball bearing that you could make a simple texturing tool, and there are all different kinds of burrs that you can buy. And the only thing you have to watch is that you're going to hold this against here. You want to know which way. This has some directional to it, so I think I want to go reverse. So if you have a reversing switch on your lathe, you can do reverse, and then you can texture on the sheet. And if you use some alcohol markers,
Yeah.
yeah. Another way to texture, and there's all different kinds of burrs you can buy to try to get different patterns and hold it different ways. But that's the frugal turner. Okay, so now we want to hollow this thing out, and we're going to go fairly deep on it. And with the stem on here, there's not a lot of room on here, so I had to put my invention hat on again. And this is just a brass rod with a 1/8 inch piece of square stock steel drilled in there, held in with 2 set screws, and that fits in my 1/2 inch collet. So now I have a mini hollow to it. One hand, you could actually even put a 1/4 inch one if you didn't want to, if you wanted to change out the collets in here, which is very easy to do. And you really, the 1/2 inch rod adds a lot of stability. It's still going to chatter a little bit.
said you had to leave weight in the bottom.
Excuse
You
me?
said you had to leave weight in the bottom.
Yes, I am.
How much?
Yeah. Well, enough that it'll,
How much is that? How deep do you go relative to the total depth?
Is it all of the red?
Is it all about halfway?
at least, I'm not quite halfway now.
Halfway into it, okay.
I'm right
Okay.
to the, you see that? I'm just about to the dark line there.
Oh, okay.
Were
So I wanna go look,
Will you bevel up
bevel down. This is a rounded, this is
Yeah.
my hollowing tool.
Okay.
I'll probably do enough.
It looks like you've left the bottom of the stem thicker than the 1/4 inch. Is it,
Yeah, it doesn't matter much. The only reason I wanted to keep this a 1/4 inch, so when I turn it around, I got something to hold. It's hard to get in there and, I mean, you can work it a little bit if you have time.
Does the length of the stem have anything to do with it?
Does the length of the stem?
Yeah. It does actually.
Has a little bit, yeah.
I know I had one that was too long once, so I said I'll cut just a little bit off, that was it was too short, so it's there.
Yeah, this one looks about right, I think. All right, I think I'm ready to flip it.
Did it land on its feet?
Now, this still has a point on it, so there's no way that it's gonna flip over. It'll spin up because it has a point. But I can tell if I get rid of this little point here, it's gonna be good. So,
Bruce,
yes,
what would happen if you tried to spin it with that point? Would it affect it?
it won't do it. It won't flip.
It'll spin. It'll spin like crazy.
It'll spin pretty well.
It does it so
So you made two versions, have a removable pin, so you can have it spin that one, take the pin out, so you can make it flip.
Okay, so if you have a collar chuck, just put it in your collar chuck. If you don't have a collar chuck, you use the poor man's collar chuck.
Yeah, me too.
And this will probably be a little imbalanced in here,
Why?
because
You kind of slide.
it's, because the kerf is spinning up, it's not gonna, but it doesn't matter. It's not bad.
It's all kind of
Now,
Huh?
you take a deep breath, you put a tool on it. If you don't take a deep breath, you can put sandpaper on it. I maybe both.
Do you have a flat spot on the bottom?
What?
Do you have a flat spot on the?
It's not quite flat, but it helps if it's a little bit flat. I think they work a little better if they're a little flatter. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of insurance here. Sometimes if they don't work real well, you can fix them. But I'm thinking the way this one looks, it might go. How many think it'll work?
I do. It'll work.
You've got too much faith. Okay, so it's got the right,
At the wobble.
okay, that's good.
That's a crazy one.
Roulette.
Come on, you can go.
Roulette wheel.
There you go.
Go
Good show.
So that's the tippy top.
How big can
Bruce,
you
why
make
did you
one?
leave the stem flat at the bottom and not rounded? Could you, or didn't? doesn't
Because
matter?
1 in 1,000 spins, it'll come to rest right on that flat point. I had it happen one time. It's sitting right up.
Huh.
I sent you pictures of most of these. Didn't you see that the write-up I sent you?
No,
Bruce,
I haven't.
how big can you make one of them?
I've seen them bigger, but I haven't made any yet, so these are about the
How much
big.
bigger?
Try it and see. Try it. Yeah.
Which one, this one? One of these?
Just, any questions on these so far? Okay. Just a few things on the, and I'm not going to do a lot with these, but I just, if you want to get into the metal ones, I'll just show you a few things I do. I start out with a rod about 1.25 inches in diameter. I have a little fiber chopped off from Harbor Freight that I cut off little circles, either like this, or sometimes bigger than this, like this, depending on whether I'm going to make a hybrid with aluminum or whether I'm going to just shape it on the bottom. When if you want to use the ceramic balls, I'll just show you quickly what I do.
Damn big phone.
Oh, sure.
So do you make those tops in two pieces, the disc and the stem?
I've done it both ways.
Both ways, okay.
He said he likes to make one. What is it?
Express, express.
So this is just, shaping it, again with high-speed tools, my Bedans I do. When I put the ceramic balls in. After dropping, I don't know how many of these on the floor, I made a little holder for one ball that I can do test fits in. And what I use is the little centering bits. Put them right in the chuck. Just take a centering bit and drill in here, and this puts a 60-degree angle on there.
What's a centering bit?
You get them packed for Harbor Freight. They're free.
Can you set that like on the edge of the lathe so I can?
Oh, is that used for metal?
It's yeah, metal and wood.
Really?
Yeah, if you want to start it, keep a drill bit from wandering,
Yeah.
it's a good starter.
Okay.
Bit.
Your ceramic holder, have you got something sticky on the end of that or what?
Yeah, how do you hold it?
Well, it's glued. I have one bowl that's glued in.
Oh.
This is just to test fit.
It's not,
Oh.
So
what you're gonna use.
I drill in here until this just fits halfway. When this goes just to the bottom, I know it's a good fit. Then I can bring it inside the house, glue it in. If you try to glue it in here, it wouldn't work so well.
What do those ceramic balls that you put in, what do they use for in the first place?
Ball bearings,
Ball bearings?
Oh, they're just ball bearings.
yes.
I thought
Did you
ball
use
bearings
BB?
were steel.
Well, they make all kinds.
Oh.
So I have some, these are ceramic balls. There's some 4mm and some,
Shot. Now, why can't you use shot? I have a lot of shot.
well, it's not perfectly round.
Oh,
Shot
it's
is
not?
not perfect, no.
That's why you use that, okay.
That's true.
These are ruby balls. They're even better in theory than the ceramic balls.
And how much does a ruby ball cost?
About a couple dollars, I think. Yeah, the ceramic ones are like less than 50 cents each, I think.
Is that how you search for them? Or do they were ruby balls or?
Yeah, there's a, I actually sent Bob a
Oh, good.
write-up, and it has a link in there. There's, you actually can do it. There's a company in Philadelphia that sells them called Swiss Jewel.
Oh.
And they sell ruby balls, but if the ceramic ones you get on eBay is probably the easiest source for them.
Ceramic balls on eBay. I'm gonna have to have a list here.
Yeah, that's to learn to.
Yeah.
I did a write-up for this and have a lot of links
Okay, good.
in there.
Bruce, did you put the link for the things you make your tools out of, what those things are?
Yes,
You know,
yes, the collar holder, yes, yes I did.
thank you.
And then there's one little thing I wanted to show you. This is the last, one of my last things. And this is this is actually a,
Yeah.
Bruce, how'd you get the shaft on the bottom of the 80/20? What holds it together there?
that's just, it's threaded in there with an insert in there. So, sometimes it's hard to put tools to the brass to balance it, and you want these things to spin really true, and this isn't too bad, but I made this little holder. It's actually for my Fordham tool when I do it, and I have one that goes in and out, which is this. I have one that goes sideways like this, but I just took some round stock, tighten this up a little bit, and I can push this in. I can sand this very lightly, and you don't have to worry about putting a tool on there. And one of the things that if you start putting a tool on these with brass or aluminum shafts, you're going to have a tendency to bend the shaft if you put too much pressure on them, particularly with, one little catch with a tool, which happened to me, you bend the shaft. It's just not strong enough. So I said, well, can you get away with sandpaper? So this, basically, I am sanding the surface, and that's if you want to get the best you can with balance. You're holding it in the collar chuck, which keeps things round, turn it around, and you get your balance.
Bruce, great job.
So-
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.